Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Recha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. This is your brother Quan Walter with the Great Millstone Charlotte Camp, with another quick lesson to the Spirit and Power of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. And this afternoon, I just want to touch on this topic of, being continually among men of understanding, right? Because as I have here, this video on TikTok, it's going into how, the wealthy are pretty much saying that they want to be in the midst of, other wealthy, man. Even if they're not, if they lack the finances to be in those same rooms, the value of being in those rooms, right, in that vibration, right, is what they want, right? So how much more us in the spirit, right? Those who are seeking after this true value, this true wealth, being this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man, right? So like it says, we'll get this here, and then we'll play the video. Sirach 27 and verse 12. If thou be among the indiscreet, observe the time, right? So those who lack, discretion, right? Those who ultimately don't have this wisdom and knowledge, right? But be continually among men of understanding, right? So this is where we seek to be, right? Whether it be through the videos, through the reading, right? The stories of our forefathers, right? Us being able to put ourselves in their shoes. Going to camp, right? Fellowshipping, right? You have the ability to, right? Brothers who are on the other side, right? That's all in the vibration, the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, right? The vibration of that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? And as we get the video, you'll be able to, parallel these things, right? So we'll play this.
Aristotle Onassis, the richest man in the world at the time, back in the 60s, said that if he was flat broke, he would do one thing, and he said, and I learned this in the secret society. He goes, that one thing is I would go to physical locations, whether it was a restaurant or a club or something, where yacht club or something, where wealthy people are, and I would be in the same room with them. Don't have to meet anybody, don't have to talk to anybody. He said I would just be in the same physical space as wealthy people. And he said he learned this ritual from the secret societies when he was a part of them. Because being in the same space of wealthy people means you are in the energy field of people who have big, expanded dreams. Aristotle.
Right. And they do these things on the left-hand side, right? So how much more us on the right, right? Well, they take, our tenets, right? Our customs and use them, for left-hand practices, because this is something that, we do, right? Every brother who, has their story of how they found the camps or how they came into this truth, right? But it all started with, seeking out the men of understanding, right? The men who had the true wealth, right? Like it says here in Proverbs 3 and verse 13, happy is the man that findeth wisdom, right? So he was looking for the wealthy of this world, right? Those who had the wise, so-called wise men, the so-called elites of this world, right? And he was happy with that. So how much more us having this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? And finding it, right? Having it open to us. It says, happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold, right? So this is the most valuable thing that you could ever hope to see, that you could ever hope to find, right? These people walk past us week in and week out, right? As we're at camp, right? Various brothers across the world, and they don't see that value, man, right? Except for those who are seeking out, right? And that's ultimately the sheep, right? As the scriptures say, the sheep, my sheep hear my voice, right? And they follow, right? The sheep of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. are going to find this wisdom, right? It says, she is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her, right? So as we go back to this video, you see what he says here.
Onassis, the richest man in the world at the time, back in the 60s, said that if he was flat broke, he would do one thing, and he
right, and we were all, spiritually broke, at one time, right? And now we're building up that spiritual bank account, right? Gaining this more and more wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man, right? But we all started at ground zero, and we all sought out, the men of understanding, right? Starting with our apostles and elder bishops on down, man.
said, and I learned this in the secret society. He goes, that one thing is I would go to physical locations.
And what would that be likened unto, right? The camps, right? And even, online, right? For those of you who can't go to the physical camp locations, right? This is the same thing when you're watching the videos, man, when you listen to the camp speakings, right? You're taking in these epistles, right? The same way Yahweh Shai was in the temple and people would come to listen. This is what's taking place right now, right? Through the men of the Lord, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai.
Whether it was a restaurant or a club or something, we're a yacht club or something, where wealthy people are.
And the true wealth, as we read, right, is to have this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man, right? I think this one in, I want to say it's in Wisdom of Solomon. Because as that video is going into, as we've heard, right, he sought out the wealthy, right? And that's what we're doing on a daily basis, man, is seeking out the wealthy, right? And even, right, he spoke on it, he learned it from the secret society, right? This can be likened unto a secret society, this, what's the word? Esoteric, right? As brothers go into, man, the priest Amawan Ariyah often touches on, right, that word of esoteric, man, right? I mean, this word, right, isn't for everybody, right? It's for a select few, a chosen few. Let's see. Yeah, this works. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6 and verse 20. It reads, therefore the desire of wisdom bringeth to a kingdom. If your delight be then in thrones and scepters, O ye kings of the people, honor wisdom that ye may reign forevermore. Right? So the kingdom is attached to gaining this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. Right? The value of this wisdom, right, supersedes, right, any carnal imagination, man. Right? So like we were going into, right, he was going after the wealthy, right, to be in their presence, right? So we should do what? Seek to be in the presence of the men of understanding, right? Continually.
And I would be in the same room with them. Don't have to meet anybody. Don't have to talk to anybody. He said I would just be in the same physical space as wealthy people.
Right, because that spirit, the scriptures talk about wisdom maketh the man's face to shine, man. Right? Just being in the midst, right? You're going to glean things, man. Hearing the conversation, seeing how, brothers carry themselves, right? As brothers, who have the opportunities to be amongst the elders and the apostles, man, right? you take you take that, what's the word? What's the word? I can't even think of the word. So like, but you basically, you take that opportunity, right, and cherish it pretty much, man, right? Because you're in the midst of that vibration, right? Brothers who get the fellowship with the camps, right? Brothers going to camp and being amongst brothers, man, right? Talking on the phone, whatever, group chats, all these things, man. Listening to the videos, right? In the listening to the video, you might not be speaking directly to a brother, man, but you're gleaning from him, right? Because the spirit, that vibration, right, that energy is still coming off of him, man. And
he said he learned this ritual from the secret societies when he was a part of them, because being in the same space of wealthy people means you are in the energy field of people who have big, expanded dreams.
Man, hey, being in the same place as those men who have this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? It's the same thing he's saying, right? It's just that wisdom is better than the riches that he's speaking on, man, right? Because when you're in the midst of the men who have this, right, you're in the midst of what? Big thinkers, man, right? Those who are thinking outside themselves, outside this current, world, right? Like the scriptures talk about. Let me get that. I think it's here. Salakia. This is 2 Ezra chapter 7, verse 16. Why hast thou not considered in thy mind the thing that is to come, rather than that which is present? Right. So just going back to this point, right? The men who have the true wealth, right? Those are who you seek to be around, because they're thinking outside of this present evil world, man. Right? They're thinking of the kingdom, right? Our minds are right so far ahead of our current circumstances, man. Right? And those who are amongst the body, right? That vibration continues, man. Right? Everybody's, putting off that same vibration, which is ultimately the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man. Let's get this here. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 36, or chapter 6, and verse 36. If thou seest a man of understanding. Actually, let's start up. Start at 32. Sirach 6 and 32. My son, if thou wilt, thou shalt be taught. And if thou wilt apply thy mind, thou shalt be prudent. Right. So, taking heed to the messages that you hear. Right. From the top down. Right. It says, if you love to hear, thou shalt receive understanding. And if thou bow thine ear, thou shalt be wise. Right. So coming, humbly, man. Right. We all started, in that same fashion, man. Right. As he said, if I had $0, right, we had zero spiritual currency, so to speak. Right. We came in humble. Right. And just wanted to be in the midst, man, right, to receive of this wisdom, man. And like I said, if thou love to hear, right, you just want to hear the message, thou shalt receive understanding. And if thou bow thine ear, thou shalt be wise, right? So just, let's talk about listening more than you speak, man, right? It's a lot to be gained from just hearing the conversation of wise men, right? That's why he made or that's why that guy was speaking on just, going into the places of the wealthy, right? And just taking it all in, right? Because there's things you hear, there's conversations being had that you won't hear anywhere else. So how much more in this truth, It says, stand in the multitude of the elders and cleave unto him that is wise, right? So hold on to this thing, man, right? Hold on to the body. Hold on to the connection, right? Because the body of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, right, is our connection to the Lord, man, right? The flock, the sheep, right? The believers, right? This is who we're concerned with, right? This is who the Spirit of the Lord is dealing with. This is who that energy, right, is exuding through, right? It says, be willing to hear every godly discourse, and let not the parables of understanding escape thee. If thou seest a man of understanding, get thee betimes unto him, and let thy foot wear the steps of his door, right? So always being right in the midst, right? Watching videos, again, reading, all these things, man, right? Being at the camp, right? It's all, right, giving you that spiritual charge, man. Let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, and meditate continually in his commandments, right? So this is something that should always be on your mind, right? Continually thinking on the precepts, continually praying, continually, seeking out the Lord, man, right? What's the word? Examining yourself, right? He shall establish thine heart, and give thee wisdom at thine own desire, right? So if you seek wisdom, right, you have to be in the midst of wisdom, man, right? Continually among the men of understanding, right? The men who the Lord is dealing with, if you seek to have that, you have to be around that, and that's what that video was going into, right? Now, these people do it for a carnal means, so how much more on the spiritual side, right? Let's go here. This is Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 23. And then, we'll close. Gotta get ready for work, man. Head to the plantation. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23. Let us hold fast the profession. Actually, let's start up. Hebrews 10:22. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water, right? So coming, anew, right? Being that new man. It says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith. And that goes back to, having no money, right? You have no what's the word? You haven't built up, that account, right? And you're just coming, in faith, right? To listen, to gain, right? To just glean, right? Understanding, right? That you may grow, in due time. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider to one another to provoke unto love and to good works, right? What's the word? Iron sharpening iron, man, right? Provoking each other to good works, right? You see, it's a righteous jealousy, so to speak, right? You see a brother doing this, right? You're like, okay, it's like let me try my hand at it, man, right? That's as brothers laying back off each other's videos, man. That's what's happening, right? Being provoked into good works, right? You might hear something, and that's a lesson for you, right? You might read something, or a brother might quote a scripture. You go into it, right? That's building you up, right? You might hear something at camp, right? Or a brother might make a point, right? And that answers a question that you have, right? All these things are building each other up because you're in the midst of that vibration. You're in the midst of that energy field as the guy was speaking on, man. You know. Verse 25. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as ye see the day approaching. Right, because we're at the last days, man. The last days of the last days. Right, that clock is ticking downward, right, to our salvation. Right, you know we're but we'll have to go through a great persecution in the midst, man. And having that connection to the Spirit is going to be more valuable as we see these times getting closer and closer to the end, man. Right? As we see Jacob's trouble approaching, as we see the economic downturn, as we see, right, the plagues and pestilences, World War III, right, the ultimate implementation of the mark of the beast being that RFID microchip, right? So much more as you see the day approaching, man, right? So, we're doing it now. But how much more should we do it knowing what the times that are approaching will be upon us, man? Right? How fast these things are going to come upon us. As the scriptures talk about, right? Your salvation is nearer than you believe, right? You have to act like that. We have to act like that as if we know our salvation, right, is upon us, man, right? It's right here at the doors, like the scriptures talk about, man, right? In Matthew. Right, even at the doors, But again, the point being, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching, man. So again, be continually among men of understanding. Be continually among this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. Right. Be continually among the men of the Lord, right? However you may, to the best of your ability, right? Continually in the book, continually watching videos, continually, meditating and praying, man, right? Because the day is approaching, right? And we're getting to that time where, right, there won't be any more access, man. Right? The famine of the word, right, is on the horizon, and all that you're gonna have is your connection to the body, right, and the relationship that you built, with Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai in that time, So, Lord willing, those edifying lessons to His Spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. And we'll close by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahushai B'Hashem, Rechah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. Kwam Yasharallah, and the Bible Ball. Shalom.